So I'm sure many of you have heard the story of the fall of Rome, but have you heard of the rise and fall of the son of Rome? If not, that admittedly wouldn't be all that surprising, as Ryse Son of Rome didn't make it onto as many dashboards as expected, with even the at the time game director noting to Eurogamer in 2014 that the development team weren't happy with the Ryse sales numbers by that point. But what makes this such a big deal and worthy of a dramatic opening line like the rise and fall of the Son of Rome? Well, Ryse Son of Rome itself was supposed to be the big deal. Originally codenamed Kingdoms and later announced at E3 in 2011 as an Xbox 360 Kinect exclusive named Ryse, the game was later revised, renamed, and re-revealed at E3 in 2013 as an Xbox One exclusive and launch title coined Ryse Son of Rome. Releasing on November 22nd of 2013, on the surface, Ryse looked every part of what a developer would want a AAA flagship launch title to be, as it offered stunning visuals accompanied by exciting and cinematic combat. Being so strikingly beautiful, especially for the time of release, it's no surprise to learn that Ryse was developed by Crytek, known for the likes of the Crysis series and the original Far Cry installment, as well as their own AAA 3D game engine, known as the CryEngine. As such, Ryse was created within the CryEngine, with the developers looking to push the boundaries of the new Xbox hardware by combining their engine's power with, for the time, innovative motion capture technology thanks to Andy Serkis's Imaginarium. For a deeper emotional tone, the developers also looked to leverage this technology by casting theatre actors such as the likes of John Hopkins, Rachel McDowell, and Tim Traylor to ensure the emotional direction of each scene could be maintained and believable performances could be delivered. And admittedly, they succeeded in this vision through a story that takes place within Crytek's depiction of Rome that follows protagonist Marius Titus, played by the aforementioned John Hopkins, who in the opening battles his way to safeguard the Roman Emperor Nero from an overwhelming barbarian attack on the city. Once secured within a safe room, in response to questions of who he is, Marius tells Nero of his past and the events that have led to this moment, with a flashback then playing out a majority of the game's narrative. Many years prior to the siege, Marius returned to his family in Rome before his deployment to the 2nd Legion after completing his combat training, and was taught lessons of leadership by his father Leontius. Through the presentation of an embossed blade, Leontius tells Marius of the Ryse-spun tale of Damocles, a mythological black-armoured centurion who sought vengeance on 3 leaders who abandoned him in battle that offers the Crytek interpretation of the Sword of Damocles parable by Cicero from within Tusculan disputations. With the blade's presentation, however, cries are heard out from the home, with a band of barbarians attacking the estate, resulting in Marius's mother, sister, and later father being slain. Here, enraged and mourning his losses, Marius is met by Commander Vitalian of the 14th Legion, who, having once fought alongside Leontius, offers Marius a chance at revenge by transferring him to the 14th. This act then leads to Britannia, where the 14th Legion's fleet is ambushed, resulting in Marius regrouping, commanding, and fighting alongside surviving troops to push back the barbarians, with the victory resulting in Marius's promotion to Centurion. Through this third of 8 acts in particular though, much of the game's key mechanics are unveiled, with the simple third-person hack-and-slash combat comprising of deflects, shield bashes, sword swings, and dodge rolls creating a flow in combat, with successful hits increasing Marius's combo count. Once enemies are made vulnerable through these attacks and deflects, highlighted by a skull icon above their head, a QTE-style takedown can be performed, with enemies glowing the colour of the corresponding attack input to complete the flow. These, whilst cinematic and exciting to begin with, are unfortunately, in a word, repetitive, and have a tendency to zoom the camera into fixtures and take enemies out of view, which can result in cheap damage. By completing these takedowns though, the perks of health regeneration, focus gain, increased damage, and increased experience that are individually selected to favour the combat scenario are activated, with takedowns being integral to survivability and progression. Additionally, through perfect hits and higher combo counts, Marius can enter Burning Eagle mode, which puts enemies into a stunned state more effectively, thus reinforcing the importance of mastering each encounter, with unbroken combos bringing greater rewards in the form of damage and experience. Experience 2 can then be used to purchase a variety of additional takedowns, increases to the aforementioned perks, reduction to the combo count required for Burning Eagle, and increasing peeler reserves. The Celtic enemies that are battled with these skills, however, unfortunately, even with an aesthetic change in Act 5, seldom evolve, with grunts, war chiefs, shield bearers, dual wielders, and warriors available to battle. Whilst each has its place and each combination creates their own combat puzzle, even in boss battles, the enemy's attack patterns are simple, with difficulty coming more from enemy quantity than quality, with the aforementioned time-slowing focus, for example, making for easy dispatch of large groups or individual enemies. For a ranged combat option though, whilst the Celts also have archers, Marius can arm Pila in defensive formations that sees the offensive line moving forward through turtling and dispatching said archers, or in standard battles to disrupt enemies and take others out from afar. Admittedly though, in the words of the developers, the elements of flow, mastery, and emotion within combat are evident, with enemies being juggled with actions that flow in and out of each other, mastery being sought by performing unbroken chains and taking down each enemy, and emotion that is found by achieving mastery and through Marius himself. See, Crytek didn't just create a Roman soldier from their own interpretation, but instead brought on Roman combat and strategies expert Christian Eckert to show them how a warrior would fight and behave to ensure an underlying accuracy to the combat beneath the theatrics, which effectively brings a realism to Marius and makes the combat, despite its shortfalls, fun. But despite the fun, with these collective points considered and through gameplay, one word in particular stands out: repetitive. Because although the combat is cinematic, intense, and has an enjoyable flow, the options available to fight with and the enemies to battle have a little evolution, and by the midway point, such as by Act 4, it leaves you wanting more variety. Speaking of Act 4 though, the celebrations of the Legion's victory are short-lived, as Vitalian is informed of a growing barbarian rebellion at York, which the 6th cohort has failed to overcome. In heading north, Marius soon encounters some seldom used traps and the barbarian leaders King Oswald and his daughter Boudica, with Marius besting the barbarians in battle and the 14th leading them to the city of York. Here Basilius, one of Emperor Nero's sons, meets the Legion and informs them that his brother Commodus, who led the 6th cohort, is missing, with Basilius through despicable threats having Oswald break and explain that Commodus was traded to a northern tribe, with the 14th ordered to retrieve him. This act then results in the Legion being ambushed and Vitalian captured by the beastly northern barbarians, with Marius again rallying surviving troops to battle back against the enemy and leading to him besting their leader Glot the Minotaur to save a captured Vitalian and Commodus. In this forest, whilst again aesthetically the enemy variety improves, mechanically and objectively the repetition again arises, with Scorpio defense turret sections utilised that appear frequently throughout the campaign, and wave defense sections being used as the primary deviation from standard combat. These objectives too are typically accompanied by options to delegate archers and defensive lines on the battlefield, with ranged support being activated via the controller or through voice commands, which offers a simple use of the Connect 2.0 that came included with each launched Xbox One. And whilst these objectives and the Connect options are at least attempts at deviations from the standard combat, which again, despite its repetition, is enjoyable, as a whole there isn't enough experimentation here that makes warranting a revisit difficult. This too though is a shame, because Ryse offers some well-hidden collectibles in the form of vistas, scrolls, and chronicles that unlock additional lore and concept art to view, whilst also allowing the stunning environments to shine through exploration. However, if missing some of these collectibles, which without a guide is quite likely, this does require one to replay the already repetitious objectives to hunt them down. A side note here though is that Ryse launched alongside compatibility with the now discontinued Xbox Smart Glass application, which allowed access to game-specific dashboards such as player stats, the inspirations of Ryse digital book, and the location of all collectibles, which has been lost to time. But like Marius wandering off for a chronicle, I digress, and in returning to the campaign with Commodus's capture front of mind, in a ruse of negotiations he betrays Oswald by the blade, with Marius realising from a seal on said blade that it was not barbarians that ended his family, but the Emperor. For Leontius was not just a retired soldier, he was once a Roman general, and in retirement he was also a member of the Roman Senate, and a political rival to Nero. Before Marius can act on this realization, however, chaos breaks out in York, and an immense barbarian force, now led by an escaped Boudica, lays siege to the city. York is then overrun, and Marius stays behind to allow Vitalian to sail alongside other survivors to tell of Commodus's actions to the Senate. With this act though, Marius is defeated by the overwhelming odds. However, he is resurrected by the goddess Summer, who has appeared to him throughout the campaign, and through a revisiting to the family villa, she has Marius bear the armour of Damocles to bring vengeance to the leaders who betrayed him. To do so, Damocles infiltrates a fighting ring at the Colosseum, which also takes centre stage within the entertaining gladiatorial multiplayer mode that sees the same combat from the single player be utilised, accompanied by alternating tile sets and objectives that as a whole brings a refreshing variety to the combat, but is unfortunately let down by an item economy that focuses on purchasable downloadable content. In the ring though, Damocles proves his prowess and earns the favour of Basilius, which results in a private meeting, Damocles gaining entry to the Colosseum proper, and one of the leaders being slain. Here, however, an oracle tells Damocles that through his prophecy, Nero can only be put to rest by his own sword, which adds a complexity to the revenge plot that Commodus is not bound by, and thus results in his defeat within the Colosseum, and Nero being publicly proclaimed as next. In fleeing from Praetorian guards, Damocles is met in the night by Vitalian, who reveals he knows his true identity, and has Marius readorn his Roman armour, but now as a general with Boudicca's force ready to lay siege to Rome. In doing so by an army built of warriors and beasts, the force invades Rome, with Vitalian confronting, but being defeated by Boudicca, leading to Marius facing her in combat. Through this battle, Marius, although hesitant, bests Boudicca and circles the story back to the present day, with Nero fleeing as Praetorian guards look to enter the chamber, and Marius in chase. Here, Marius encounters the god Aquilo, who is revealed to have played a part by influencing the story's events with the goal of the fall of Rome, with this conversation resulting in Marius being wounded by Nero. Despite his condition, fueled by vengeance, Marius battles through the Royal Praetorian Guard and faces Nero, tackling him off of the palace balcony and onto the sword of his statue, fulfilling the oracle's prophecy and defeating his final betrayer. This then sees Marius pass from his wounds, the gods disappearing, Rome saved, and Marius being honoured as a saviour in statue, concluding the story. But whilst this roughly 6.5 hour tale that gained criticism for its length ends in-game, the story of Ryse, son of Rome continues through the fondness shared by its player base and its fall. For whilst Ryse offers repetition, mechanical frustration, and lacks variety in some departments, it offers a concept that could be taken much further. Whilst repetitive, the combat model and its dimensions of flow, mastery, and emotion are solid, and could be tweaked for greater effectiveness through increased enemy variety, additional weapon options, and improved cinematic framing. Additionally, the Ryse concept has the potential to take on a variety of new settings from history and mythology, such as through Ryse, son of Greece or Daughter of the Orient, to name a few hypothetical examples that could fit the frame of an RPG quite well. However, whilst in 2014 Ryse released on PC as a response to the interest from fans and the potential for the release to showcase the CryEngine, as at least the time of this recording, there appears to be no sequel in the works that could take advantage of an expansion. Despite this though, in the 2020s, talks of a revival of the IP began to stir, as rumours appeared that an industry insider had said that a multi-platform Ryse sequel was in the works. But this speculation remained rumour, and with alleged differences of IP ownership and a developer transition in priorities, for now, whilst Ryse remains available to experience for a few dollars on disc and on Game Pass, the IP has all but fallen. However, with the calls for a follow-up that came to light from a tweet by Crytek in 2023 asking about the fond memories gamers share of Ryse, and the admiration for the title found on the message boards of Reddit and social media, perhaps one day the memories those have for Ryse will lead to a resurrection of the IP to seek vengeance for its abandonment.